Mr. Speaker, I had technical difficulty. I would like to vote no.
Speaker, I was unable to use my app. I would like to vote no.
The governing Liberal Party narrowly avoided another election as a weird budget vote exposed the theatrics of Canadian politics. So in this video, I'm going to go over what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and maybe what it means for us, if anything. So last night, the Liberals needed to survive this budget vote as it essentially acted as a vote of confidence in the government. If the budget failed, then there would be another election called somewhere between December 24th and January 8th. I don't think anybody wanted that. That's going to factor in to what happened with this vote. So while every other party claimed they did not support the budget, their votes, or the way they voted, kind of was at odds with that. So going into this vote, Liberals were confident that even if an election were to be called, that they would likely win again, if not be able to gain seats. Conservatives quietly did not want another election while loudly claiming this was a crazy budget, even though, as I'll get to later, this was a conservative budget. The NDP were, I would argue, the most honest, though you may disagree with their tactics here, but the most honest in their opposition to the budget, while also recognizing that they didn't want another election either. And the one Green Party vote, Elizabeth May, was a little weird, considering she supported this budget despite not getting anything from it. That said, this is how the vote went down.
Yeas pour 170, 170. Nays contre 168, 163.
And the final vote count is 170 to 168. The vote of Elizabeth May, what appears to be the abstentions of Laurie Idlout and Gord Johns and possibly Matt Genereux for the Conservatives were enough for the government to get a majority vote on their first budget without the need of a tie or a speaker to break the tie. Interesting that some Conservatives stood up very last minute to make sure they had a no vote recorded, either a technical issue or maybe a tactical issue that you wanted to see where this was going to go.
This is where the stupid theatrics of Canadian politics comes in, or at least the Conservative Party theatrics. So the Conservative Party so against this Liberal budget, even though, again, it was a Conservative budget. More details on it in a second. So against this budget, could not possibly vote for this budget. Yet, two of their more high-profile MPs, Andrew Scheer and Scott Reid, did not vote either way until they could see how everyone else voted, seeing that it was going to pass, so there would not be an election. And then all of a sudden, oh, now I can vote, claiming that they had technical issues with the app, yet there was no reason for them to use the app because they were in the House of Commons. They could have voted manually. So here's how their votes went down. And keep in mind, this is coming after they already saw how everyone else voted.
Official opposition House Leader has a point.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I had technical difficulty. I would like to vote no.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I was unable to use my app. I would like to vote no.
Yes, I'm sure you were not able to use the app. Technical difficulties. You hear someone in the background there yelling, but you're here, because they did not need to use the app. They could have voted there. This was a strategic choice to ensure that there would not be another election because they don't like their chances for another election. So while they, on one hand, claim we are willing to take down this government over this terrible budget, they had never had any intention of doing so and waited to the last minute because they weren't sure how anyone else was going to vote in terms of like the NDP. Waited to see how everyone else voted before they could lock in their final two votes to ensure that they could still vote no while making sure the budget passed so that they would avoid an election. Just absolute clownery, like trying to play these games as a way to get around public perception of what the party's supposed to be arguing. Yet we're all very clear about what's going on here. You're not fooling anybody. Even CBC covering it called it out at the time. It wasn't a secret to anybody what you were doing. Now, compare that to the NDP, who also had a mixed vote. Most of them voted no against the budget, but a couple of them abstained, and there's actually good reasoning. I'll get to that in a bit. But I want to first play for you. This is NDP interim leader Don Davies discussing why they were against the budget, but also wanted to ensure it still passed.
While there are elements of the budget which reflect our concerns, on the whole, this is a Conservative budget. From reducing healthcare funding to provinces, to making deeper cuts to services than Stephen Harper's budgets did, including to programs that are helping Canada's most marginalized communities, to reversing action on the climate crisis, this budget fails to deliver the policies our country needs. It particularly fails Indigenous people. But through these discussions, it became equally clear that Canadians do not want an election right now.
All right, so I'm going to get to more on that last point about Canadians not wanting another election. But first, to his point about this being a conservative budget, this is just the reality of it. So there's a lot of writing on this. We'll link you to a few examples, a few stories, and quote a couple here. But The Breach has a great video on this. A budget for tanks, banks, and oil barons. Martin Lukeich and Desmond Cole discussed the Liberal government's Harper-esque budget. CUPE, the Canadian Union of Public Employees, writing here, Carney's first budget gives corporations a free ride and leaves working Canadians behind. CBC, is Mark Carney's budget a progressive conservative budget? This is off of the comments from Liberal MP Nate Erskine-Smith, who did a critical video of the budget, even though he supported it. And I mean, the reality is, yes, this is a conservative budget. Now, for Americans watching or anyone else around the world, I know this is confusing to you, progressive conservative, because those are two different things. But they're referring to the Progressive Conservative Party, which was a conservative party in Canada before it just became the Conservative Party. But there is a reasoning to believe that this indeed was simply a early 90s conservative budget. So it tosses aside the Trudeau-era luxury tax on yachts and private planes, which in itself, like that alone should be enough. I should end the video here, but it's ridiculous. Halts the former Prime Minister's signature promise to plant 2 billion trees, only sufficing for 1 billion. It also is more open to liquefied natural gas, so the budget restores a tax credit for the LNG development that had expired in 2024. It also cements a number of previously announced changes, including the repeal of the consumer carbon tax, the reversal of changes to capital gains taxes, and the end of the digital services tax, which was a request from Donald Trump that the Carney government gave into because Trump said, no, we're going to have no more trade discussions until you change this, because it was going to affect big digital companies like Google and Facebook. So Carney caved immediately, and where's that trade deal? Ridiculous. Also, budget aims to shrink the size of the public service by 40,000 and find 44 billion in spending cuts over 4 years, which again goes to how conservative this budget is. The few things that do remain in place that are positive: the Canada Child Benefit, dental care, federal funding for child care, all remain in place. Brian Mulroney was business-oriented and fiscal conservative. Mulroney's last budget aimed to reduce program spending to 13.9% of GDP. So again, for non-Canadians, Brian Mulroney is a former Prime Minister of Canada under the Progressive Conservative label in the early 90s. So while Carney's first budget sees program spending falling to 15.4% of GDP. So very similar to Mulroney's 13.9%. Also worth mentioning that the exact shape, as they write here, of Carney's climate plan is still unclear, which goes to how bizarre the Elizabeth May Green Party vote was for the budget. But also a big issue in this budget is housing. So after this big talk about housing during the election, we're going to build all these homes. Their plan, Build Canada Homes, they don't even have the promised tax incentive for rental construction, which is such a small piece of this, going to how empty the entire plan is. Because this is not about public housing. This is not putting Canadians to work in public jobs, building homes for Canadians. It is a giveaway to the private market. So there's a great piece here from Canadian Dimension. Mark Carney is no wartime home builder. The PM's market-oriented solutions bear little resemblance to the wartime housing policies he claims are his inspiration. So Build Canada Homes, BCH, will swing no hammers and own no property. Homes built by private firms with federal dollars will be immediately sold on the open market. However, there is no guarantee they will be sold to the people who need them most. Carney's market-based approach to the housing crisis stands in stark contrast to the operational model of Wartime Housing Limited, the Crown Corporation created to solve the housing crisis during and after the war. So this is not the housing program that a lot of us were hoping for. And during the election, Mark Carney was vague enough where anybody that wanted what they wanted that to be could see it in that plan. So if you wanted a more private-public partnership, that's what you saw, and that's what you're getting. If you were hoping for public housing, it was vague enough where you could think, hey, maybe there's an element of that in this, and no, none of that. So it completely falls short on so many elements. This was a conservative budget, yet still the conservatives so adamant about this being a terrible budget. And yes, it was, because it was one that you would have tabled. This gets to the NDP MP Gord Johns for why he abstained on the vote despite not supporting it.
Well, first of all, we made it clear last week, well, the week before last when the House was sitting, that we were going to go back to our ridings and listen to our constituents. I talked to every single mayor, 9 mayors in my riding, 3 regional district chairs, 17 elected chief councillors. All of them were unanimous and they didn't want the government to fall. So I did consultation. Unlike the Conservative MP on Vancouver Island who was on CBC radio just on Friday night saying that we shouldn't have an election, that nobody wanted an election, that he heard from his constituents all week they didn't want an election, that there should be an election next fall. What did he do? He voted for an election. So I'm sorry, we're being the adult in the room listening to our constituents who said right now is not the time to have an election. In the face of Donald Trump, that we need to stand united. We're going to fight. We're going to fight tomorrow for the things that we put on the table that we're not going to bargain in public about. And we're going to fight until we get more for Canadians. That is what Canadians expect of us, and that's what we're going to do.
So look, that's at least honest. Now, you may not like that answer. You may not like their strategy because it essentially undercuts their power. They only have 7 seats, but it's enough to hold the balance of power in the current minority government. They could have utilized their vote to take the government down and go to a new election, but they don't even have a leader right now. They have an interim leader. They're currently going through a leadership race. They don't have any money. Like, I don't think another election would have benefited them or even really benefited the direction of the government, assuming the Liberals would win again. And if not, then it'd be the Conservatives. So is that going to improve things? It's at least honest. I understand where they're coming from. He talked to his constituents. They don't want another election. No one wants another election. So I understand that position. It's a lot better, in my opinion, than the Conservatives who claim to be so against this, again, conservative budget. So against it, yet can't even be honest with the fact that, yes, they're against it, but they also don't want another election. And if you look at current polling, I mean, this is Abacus data, but this is pretty consistent across the board, regardless of who you check. While the government approval is tightening a little bit there, Mark Carney's approval has stabilized in the net favorable of plus 12, so still positive for him. Meanwhile, Pierre Poilievre's negatives are increasing. He's now a -7. I don't think they would have benefited. I should say, I don't think the Conservatives would have benefited from another election. And I didn't mention the Bloc here because they all voted against the budget. They were always against it from the start. There's no question there. I'm not in Quebec. I don't have a whole lot of, just being honest here, don't have a whole lot of awareness of where the Bloc currently sit and their position on the whole thing. But they tend to lean more left, at least on economic issues. So, them being against it, I totally understand. But in terms of the strategy of it, you could say they were honest as well, though I would think they also wouldn't want another election. I don't think anybody wanted another election. So the budget was going to pass. That's how it went down. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe and check out some of the other videos I have on this channel.